Okay, here is the last of three installments for the video lecture series here on Chapter 11, Riverside High School students. So just to let you know you're in the right place, this should have been the last slide you saw for the last part of the video that you watched. Same rules apply here. You're going to want to take notes on this. You can stop the video, start it. The link will remain up on YouTube indefinitely, so you'll have access to this. So now we're moving into the idea of single parents. I don't have as many images with this part of the lecture, so sorry. Over 40% of all U.S. births are to unwed mothers. Out-of-wedlock births comprise 70% of African American births, 50% of Latino births, and 30% of European American births. Causes of being a single parent include high divorce rates, within our culture especially, the decision to keep out-of-wedlock children, and higher fertility rates, especially in the lower rungs of the socioeconomic status ladder. Just kind of an aside, poor people tend to have larger families in this country. More affluent families tend to have less children within our society. Some more on single parents. Divorced and single parents report feeling frustration and guilt. They try to be their child's friend or peer, and they use inconsistent discipline, which is never ever a good idea. They may overindulge and actually end up spoiling the child, if you will. Single parents often face financial strains because there are not two incomes, there's just one, especially if it's a mother who's making less money than her ex-husband or than the father for working probably the same kind of job in the same economy, probably footing most of the bills for the child as well. So that creates enormous financial strain. Single mothers are often affected the most. Insecurity about sexuality and concerns for how children will react affect decisions to start dating again. A lot of times children will have problems with their parents, especially their mothers, who decide they want to get back out into the field, if you will. Alternate forms of parenting. 1/3 of North American couples become step parents, foster parents, or adoptive parents. I happen to be an adoptive parent. One of the greatest things that has ever happened to my life. So I fall within that 1/3 statistic. And are concerned about how strongly the child will bond with them. There's a lot of research about how adoptive children bond or don't bond with their adoptive parents. It's pretty inconsistent. The research, that is pretty inconsistent. Many children remain very close to their non-custodial parents. Stepchildren may manifest emotional and behavioral problems, which sort of heightens the likelihood that their step-parents may get divorced. Adopted children may wish to have contact with their birth parents. That's not uncommon at all. And that could be viewed as rejection by adoptive parents. They may get defensive and feel like something is wrong, and they may feel like they're being rejected by their adoptive children, and that may not be the case at all. Children adopted from another culture may struggle with identity issues, especially children adopted from different countries. Foster parents have the most difficulty developing and maintaining bonds with their foster children because foster children vary in age at the time they were taken from their biological parents. A lot of times there was trauma or some uncomfortable or horrific situations involved. And we all know and hear about terrible stories of things that happen to children while they're in foster care. They get bounced a lot of times from one foster home to the next. Not to say that all foster homes are horrific and terrible. They're not. There are lots of good foster parents and a lot of good foster homes and situations. Foster children may be reunited at any time with their parents or adopted by another couple. So it's difficult. It's difficult for foster parents because there's a lot of instability. Society resists gays or lesbians having children. And actually some states have passed laws against homosexuals adopting or fostering children. Compared to the children of heterosexuals, those raised by gay and lesbian parents show equal cognitive development. They are equally adjusted psychologically, and they are no more likely to identify as gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgendered, or heterosexual. So essentially there's absolutely nothing to worry about with homosexuals raising children, because these children end up being no different, no better, no worse than children who are raised by heterosexual parents on virtually every single identifiable dimension. Also, exhibit lower levels of homophobia. Children raised by gay and lesbian parents, they're not as homophobic for obvious reasons. They experience more egalitarian parenting as well. Divorce. Who gets divorced? Well, a lot of people. We've talked about in class. The divorce rate in this country is anywhere between 50 and 60%. We know with certainty that most marriages from this day on will end in divorce. Most marriages will end in divorce. You can judge that however you want. Some people bemoan this. They think it's a social problem. Others say, well, it's you're married, it works for a while, you get a divorce, it's not a big deal. So opinions will vary on that. What are remarriages like? How are they similar to and different from first marriages? U.S. couples have a 50% chance of divorce. Well, again, depending on what statistics, between 50 and 60. And a 60% chance if married between the ages of 20 and 24. So the younger the marriage, the greater the likelihood that a divorce will occur at some point. The U.S. divorce rate is 54.8%, according to this PowerPoint presentation that I have here. That's about right. That's about between 50 and 60%. And is virtually tied for the highest rate out of 47 countries. So we have a very, very high divorce rate. You can see, you can kind of zoom in on this, pause it if you want to. The United States is in the green. There we are, 1990, stretching into the year 2008. Percentage of marriages that end in divorce, it was 50% in 1990. In 1995, it was about 67%. Year 2000, it's about 53%. Then you get into 2008, it's back up to 54%. The United Kingdom, Britain, is pretty close to us. Also, Germany has a pretty high divorce rate, but nobody has as high divorce rate as we do. Of these countries, the lowest divorce rate is Italy, 10% in 1990. In 2008, 10%. Very, very low divorce rate. Who gets divorced and why? Ethnicity is a big factor in who divorces. African and Asian American couples have been married longer before divorcing. Ethnically mixed marriages are also at risk because there are other pressures, different pressures that are brought to bear on those relationships. Infidelity is the most commonly reported cause of divorce. Financial problems are probably a close second. Other commonly reported causes of divorce are incompatibility. People just don't get along. They can't live together. They don't mesh well. Drug or alcohol use, and just simply growing apart. We're going to skip that slide. Who gets divorced and why? Some more. Here are reasons men give for divorce. It's kind of interesting. Communication problems, unhappiness, incompatibility, sexual problems, financial problems, emotional abuse, women's liberation. In other words, women wanting to be independent and doing things sort of in a way that the man would not agree with or approve of. In-laws, infidelity by spouse, and alcohol abuse by himself. When you ask women reasons for divorce, women cite communication problems, unhappiness, incompatibility. So we're pretty close to the same at the top. Emotional abuse, financial problems, sexual problems, alcohol abuse by spouse, infidelity, physical abuse, and in-laws. So some of those are pretty similar. Gottman and Levinson predict that with 93% accuracy that both early divorce within the marriage first 7 years and later divorce when the first child reaches 14 also show that expressing negative emotions during conflict predict early but not later divorce. The research shows that the absence of positive emotions predicts later divorce. Showing these factors to be good predictors may not hold in lower income, high-risk couples. The odds for divorce are higher earlier than later in marriage, and we've already talked about that. With time, couples learn to use more accommodating but fewer destructive or quiet withdrawal behaviors. European American husbands, conflict management behaviors are more consistent across time. They use less withdrawal even early in the marriage. Covenant marriage makes marriage more difficult by expanding the marriage contract to a lifelong commitment within a supportive community. If this is the case, if there are problems, the couple might agree to go to counseling if problems arise. The grounds for divorce are incredibly restrictive. And we see that within certain religious faiths or denominations within this country as well. A collaborative divorce. This is a voluntary agreement for couples to negotiate their divorce, rather than a court imposing the terms. Beneficial in many ways. The Healthy Marriage Initiative stresses marriage's positive aspects and marital education. The effects of divorce on the couple. Divorced individuals often feel disappointed, misunderstood, and rejected, and they find it difficult to let go or to find new friendships or new relationships, intimate relationships at that. Divorce causes financial and child support problems for women, for reasons that we've talked about. Women make less than men for doing basically the same job, and they're footing most of the financial bills for their children, raising their children. Women who initiate the divorce report self-focused growth and optimism. So if the woman is the one who initiates it, she tends to deal better with it and is more psychologically adjusted to it. Adjustment to single life is better for people less preoccupied with, less hostile toward, and more forgiving of the ex-partner. Remarriage is less likely for middle-aged or older women. Relationships with adult children. Parental divorce negatively affects young adults in many ways, including their views on intimate and marital relationships. They may have jaded views of marriage and relationships because of this. Their ability to achieve love, sexual intimacy, and commitment to marriage and parenthood, and also relationships with fathers while bringing them closer to their mothers. On average, men wait about 3.5 years before remarrying. European Americans, military vets, those with less education remarry more often. So the less education, the more remarriage. The more education, the less remarrying. Remarriages have a 25% higher rate of divorce than original marriages. This rate is higher for remarriages involving stepchildren. And women are more likely to initiate a divorce, but are less likely to remarry unless they are among the lower ranks of the socioeconomic status ladder, poor. Younger generations tend to remarry at a lower rate. Those who remarry sooner have no less success in marriage than those who wait. Young adult children report a positive effect of their parents happily remarrying on their own intimate relationships. And that is the end of part 3, the last and final part of chapter 11. Thank you.